Hey everybody, David here with Red Pill News. As you may have heard, Donald Trump has been convicted of 34 felonies. There's so many implications of this. What's next for Donald Trump and what's next for his campaign, how Biden's reacting to this, what the media is doing. I'm joined here with my guest, JR. Other than this attack on our Constitution, JR, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm glad to be with you this evening. I wish it was under different circumstances, but I'm excited to be here with you and talk with you and your audience.
Good to have you. It's always great to have a fellow patriot. We'll jump straight in here. One thing I'll note, it's Trump is staying optimistic despite this. This is a great video or a great statement he made right after.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. But the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA, and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end and we'll win, because our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess. We're a nation in decline, serious decline. Millions and millions of people pouring into our country right now from prisons and from mental institutions, terrorists, and they're taking over our country. We have a country that's in big trouble. But this was a rigged decision right from day one, with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never. And we will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over. Thank you very much.
Isn't it amazing how optimistic he can be after all of this? And he just talks about saving America.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's one of the things people love about President Trump. He just gives off this strength. We know with President Trump, he's cool under pressure. And I can't really think of a day where someone would have more pressure on them than a day where you're convicted of 34 felonies.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. It is a very sad day for America, for our Constitution, but it's good to see him still optimistic going forward. He says on Truth Social, victory on November 5th, save America. And Esther in the comments from Facebook says the real verdict, she agrees, will be on November 5th. U.S., vote red, vote Trump. Amen to that, because Biden has absolutely destroyed our economy, and we've got 10 million people at least that have come in illegally. Trump is saying that tomorrow morning at 11 a.m., there's going to be a press conference at Trump Tower, and he will be sentenced on July 11th. It's going to be 2 days before he'll be formally nominated for president. But here is another great ad that Trump just released. We'll discuss what the sentencing is going to be, the implications of that. Will Trump go to jail? Will he be placed under house arrest? We'll discuss all of that in a bit. But let's check this video out as well.
Thank you for joining us here today. Earlier this afternoon, Donald Trump was arraigned by a Manhattan grand jury on 34 felony counts.
This case is an abomination. You know, it's obviously political. 7 years to try to come up with this case. They're just wrong on the law.
The only crime that Donald Trump is being prosecuted for is the crime of running for president.
Political persecution at the highest level.
They've quite frankly given up on trying to beat him at the polls. Either going to steal it or stop it by law firm.
A Democrat prosecutor elected on a Get Trump platform.
What's going on here is a disgusting disgrace. It is war on Trump. It is war on the Republican Party. And it is a war on the Republic.
This case is the weakest case I've seen in 60 years of teaching, practicing, and writing about criminal law.
I doubt the New York indictment would have been brought against a defendant whose name was not Donald Trump.
This judge, I mean, you don't need a prosecutor if you have a judge like this. This judge is not on the level.
It's a terrible case, but the judge has been pretty much a rubber stamp on everything that Bragg has wanted to do.
They're perverting the system of justice. You know, that's where the danger lies. The corruption and subversion of our institutions by the left.
This is the Democrats' entire strategy, to confine President Trump to a dirty criminal courtroom and keep him off the campaign trail where he can bring his winning message to voters across this country.
New York has become a legal banana republic. They are so determined to get Donald Trump.
Look, convicting Donald Trump, that's all they have.
I think they have no cards, and they're depending upon Trump getting convicted.
That Trump train doesn't show any signs of slowing down.
The only verdict that matters is the verdict at the ballot box.
So true. What a great ad. JR, what do you think about the average normie voter who's not into politics? Do you think they're awakened to this being such a criminalization of politics? What do you think?
Well, I would hope so. And what I've been encouraging my viewers all day long is, when you're mad, don't sit back and have a bad rest of your day, a bad week, a bad month, whatever. What we need to do is we all need to take action, decisive action. Turn your anger into action. Donate. Make sure you vote coming up this November. Talk to your friends, your neighbors. Spread channels like your channel, my channel. Let people get the full information so they can be made aware of what is truly going on. Indoctrination is a serious problem, and we all have to take action.
You're absolutely correct, and I'll echo that. People used to talk about politics more openly. We didn't have so much animosity, but it's so important to talk to your friends about what's going on if they're not paying attention. But I do think that Americans are waking up. They're seeing that a veteran is not getting his benefits, but someone who has never paid taxes is living in a 4-star hotel in New York City. So I'm hopeful, but I completely agree with you about Americans needing to wake up. And here is the former Deputy Assistant Attorney General. What happens to the presidency in our constitutional system? There's a real danger here of this just being a tit for tat, arrest, arrest, arrest. Now, I do believe there's a criminal conspiracy against Donald Trump, that there was some collaboration between perhaps the White House and all of these different state courts, and that criminal conspiracy should be investigated. But I do fear, and I hope that we don't devolve into just back and forth weaponization.
So, John, you have a piece out today that you say this trial has already affected essentially the office of the presidency. And you suggest that there may need to be some pushing back, you say, from the other side of the aisle. But do you worry now that we've kind of crossed a line at which politics has always been difficult, but much more of a blood sport? And do you worry that our legal process is being pulled into that? And you know, the idea that both sides should consider using that as a weapon?
Yes, Shannon, I think for all of us Americans, it's not as important what happens to President Trump as a person. It's what's important is what happens to the presidency in our constitutional system. What does this mean for future presidents? And the weaker that these cases are, the weaker that Bragg's cases, the weaker that Merchan allows a case like this to go forward and get to the jury, the bigger the door is open for any DA in the future to bring charges against a president from the opposite party that they don't like. That kind of harassment of presidents is going to cause them to worry about their legal liability, when what they should be doing is focusing on making the toughest decisions on behalf of the American people, on behalf of protecting the country. And so, yes, I really do worry. And I think that the only way to put a stop to this, sadly, is for some Republican DAs to prosecute Democratic office holders, Democratic executive branch officials, Hunter Biden, maybe even Joe Biden. That's the only way, I think, to put a stop to this. Otherwise, what we've seen is the crossing of a constitutional Rubicon where suing presidential predecessors is going to just be the norm.
Well, and so much of what you had to say in that answer, John, touches on those immunity arguments we had at the Supreme Court about, the possibility that an incumbent who is running again or loses and worries about what is going to come from his predecessor. We'll have to see, because we wait on the Supreme Court for that decision. We'll get opinions again next.
And that's the thing with the courts too. It's going to be a while before they have that ruling on immunity. And unfortunately, the state court in New York is Trump can be sentenced right away, and he wouldn't have the opportunity to appeal before being sentenced. So that's tragic.
Very tragic. And I have heard some whispering going on that they may actually try a direct appeal to the United States Supreme Court. It does require 4 justices to say, hey, we're going to go ahead and take this out of turn because this is a special case. Now, the Supreme Court has done this before, but it is a very, very rare scenario. Last time, to my memory, they did this was basically back during Bush v. Gore. So it could happen. It's a slim possibility. However, these are very unique circumstances, to say the least.
They are. That's a great insight. I wasn't aware of that. That would be, I didn't know they had that jurisdiction to go to a state court case thing, but it makes sense now that you mentioned Bush v. Gore in 2000. And one great thing that could come from that, Samuel Alito has stated, hey, I'm not going to recuse myself, Democrats, just because my wife chose to fly a flag. So I do think we have those core constitutionally conservative justices that would do the right thing if this does go to the court. Zach, thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate that. Sapphire says, I live in Montana. I went to Walmart to shop for groceries, and a small ribeye was $25. How can Americans afford that?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say hello to Zach real quick and to Sapphire. They're 2 of my regulars. It's always good to see y'all in the chat. I wanted to comment for just a second, David. This story really bothers me on this Alito nonsense. Isn't it just unbelievable how you have all these Democrats in unison drumming this beat that, hey, Samuel Alito needs to step down. Yet you have Judge Merchan, who has a daughter that's just not a Democrat. She's a Democratic operative who has made in excess of $93 million to date. Her client list is the current president of the United States, President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and of course, Adam Schiff. And we all know what President Trump calls Adam Schiff. Additionally, you have the Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. They're always on him to recuse himself because of activities his wife may or may not be engaging in. It's just outstanding that when the shoe is on the other foot, they always say you're doing something wrong, except if you're a Democrat.
Right. It's peak hypocrisy, and they'll use whatever goodwill people have. Like if people have a good sentiment about being not racist, they'll use that against them. Like I think of the New York governor recently. He said, we need to hire, or not the New York governor, the mayor rather, Eric Adams. We need to hire illegal immigrants as lifeguards because they're good swimmers.
Yeah,
they don't care about
that.
racism.
That was kind of humorous. Yeah.
Just straight virtue signaling. But I love this messaging coming from Trump because it's true. He is a political prisoner, and thinking of it in these terms will, I think, make a lot of Americans realize how serious this is. And there was a lot of strong reaction outside of the courtroom today. A lot of some strong words, which, the left is, it's sick to me that so many Democrats don't realize this is a constitutional crisis. This is something that can destroy the country entirely. And they think it's so normal. I call it peak Trump derangement syndrome. And I feel bad for those people because they literally have been fed U.S. military grade propaganda, the same messaging techniques that the U.S. has used against enemies abroad is employed by the corporate media against United States citizens. And it's so sick. And I'm so thankful for social media and independent creators like you and I, where we can counter that narrative and then hopefully the corporate media will be less relevant over time.
Exactly. I think you're right on it. What we learned today was that the Biden camp, they definitely have tentacles everywhere. I mean, let's just call it what it is. This nonsense in New York, this was nothing more than an extension of the Biden camp. And I think today the Dems showed their true colors. If they are allowed to get away with this, never again in the United States will we be able to have a populist candidate for president. And this is bigger than Donald Trump. This is much bigger than Donald Trump. It has to do with your right, our viewers' right, and my right to vote for who we want to be president of the United States.
Absolutely. And if you look at presidents starting at Jimmy Carter, going all the way to Obama, 10 wars, no charges. If you look at Donald Trump, 0 major new wars started, and I think total 90-something charges so far. It seems like that there's a shadow government that feeds the military-industrial complex, and that the executive branch, to some extent, is not as powerful as the founders intended for it to be in Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, executive powers. And that's really sad. It seems like that ties into part of this. Trump was said, and he even walked into North Korea to settle a dispute with the dictator there. Like, how amazing is it that he's trying to have peace, and the president that's the most peaceful, sadly, is the most persecuted?
Well, oftentimes it takes somebody with a new way of thinking to bring about change. And that's exactly what Donald Trump during his administration showed each and every one of us. I don't care if you're talking about the Middle East or you're talking about North Korea. These were things that everybody said you can't do, can't be done. Yet he made extreme progress, if not outright achieve peace among different nations.
That's true. Yeah. And I believe he will be reelected. I hope that Schedule F, I believe that's the name of it, that it can be used correctly, because the perverse incentive of government employees is to expand the government so they can get more money and the contractors can get more money. But we need to make it way easier to fire government employees. There's so many incompetent government employees.
I would agree with that.
But we'll take a look at this story here. The Trump campaign, let me move us so we can read the headline. They get an immediate avalanche of cash, and Trump's website crashed, the donation website, which is pretty amazing. A tech entrepreneur is just donated $300,000 to President Trump, and Team Trump on X posted website back online after it going down with so many people donating. Lee Zeldin secured a $800,000 donation from someone for Trump. So that's great to hear.
That was the one I was mentioning. I thought I heard $800,000. That has to be something that feels good in the checking account for the Republicans.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have even CNN's legal analysts. I mean, they're still liberal. They have a new stakeholder who's a Trump supporter. He's a minority stakeholder. But, I mean, they're even saying this is not fair. And what this is going to come down to is, I believe the judge is going to either jail Trump or put him on house arrest so he can't actually campaign. And I heard an analyst say that a judge like this, his ultimate fantasy might be to jail Trump, like a power trip fantasy. But at the least, we might see Trump being placed under house arrest where he can't campaign. And that is going to, I think, to some extent, hurt his campaign. Voter sentiment's probably mostly set in already, but there might be a few independents that are still thinking, what can Trump do for me if he's reelected? So you're talking about the Supreme Court intervening. Hopefully they will before that.
Sure. Yeah, I would say this. I'm not one that takes any joy in saying I was right or whatever, but this is something I've been talking with my viewers about on my program, and that is, I said all along he was probably going to be convicted just because of the makeup of the jury. You have an 88% Democratic type of place that they judge shop. Well, this was forum shopping, and that's exactly exactly what happened. And now that they got that conviction, to your point, what could happen is, as you talk about an outrage and making people upset, what is probably going to happen is he will probably be put in jail. That would not surprise me at all, if you can believe that. A former president of the United States actually incarcerated or on home confinement. And then think of this: days before the first presidential debate, you're going to have a situation where we likely will have a former president on probation. He may have to check in with a PO officer before he's able to go to any particular state. And get this: when you're a convicted felon in many states, you can't even vote. You cannot own a gun. There are many restrictions, unfortunately, that former President Donald Trump is going to be under. It's just absolutely a sickening event that's happened today.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have Marilyn here saying, I really believe the jurors were bought and paid for, or maybe they were influenced. It's hard to say. Thankfully, you mentioned all those restrictions. The Constitution does prevent felons from running for a lot of offices, but interestingly, they never prevented a felon from running for president because they feared this weaponization. And a lot of the founding fathers were felons back in England, or the equivalent of what we would have, a felon today. And it's very sad. We'll see exactly what happens here with the voting and how people react to this. I think a lot of Black voters are going to see this as a system that has been corrupt for a long time, and they're going to sympathize with Trump. And there's just a lot of people in general who have been a victim of sometimes bad prosecution. But
David, I want to go on the record, and I just want to tell you and tell your viewers at the same time, I'm hereby predicting that because of what happened today, this just solidified the presidency for President Donald Trump. I think it's really that simple. I think there's going to be a groundswell of support, sympathy, whatever you want to call it. But this type of actions enrages people. I'm not a person that likes to engage in identity politics, race, whatever. But the reality is there are a lot of individuals in the minority community, specifically the Black community. They have had abuses in the system. They have been subjected to a different type of justice than somebody that has money might have experienced. And they can relate to former President Donald Trump at this point. And I think this is only going to cause more support to flow his way.
I agree with that. I would say my concern overall is what Democrats figured out is elections aren't about being popular, the most popular president or candidate. It's about who can collect the most ballots. And what we have raging at the state level and state courts is there's a plethora of lawsuits of trying to prevent ballots from arriving after election day, or that the return address must be written in hand. I think we made a lot of progress in some key states in making election integrity a bigger thing. I hope it's enough, because all of the mail ballots were overwhelmingly for Biden and the in-person votes were for Trump. And it's the voter rolls haven't been cleaned up in some states. I mean, they're starting to be now. But that's what concerns me, is who can collect the most ballots, even though there is clearly more optimism for Donald Trump. It's all the polls say that.
David, you're right on the money as usual, and I can echo exactly what you're saying. I will add to it that the Democrats have always been good with the ground game. That has always helped them, especially with local races. Having said that, President Trump has came out along with the Republican Party. He obviously put in a new leader there, and I believe his sister-in-law, or his daughter-in-law rather, is one of the co-presidents or co-chairman, whatever the title is. And this time he's learned from 2016. He has a solid game this time, a solid game plan to get people to the polls. And again, I encourage your viewers, everyone, support President Donald Trump, support the Republican Party. If you're mad right now about what has happened, get online and donate.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're spot on there. And I would also encourage everyone watching, don't let this destroy your spirit, and also don't let it get you so angry that you would put yourself in a bad situation to do anything stupid, because what the deep state would want is to find a reason to take away more civil liberties. So pray and engage actively in a electoral way, because there absolutely is hope for this. We absolutely still can turn this thing around.
David, I just want to say one thing. You're absolutely right on this again, because I can tell you from personal experience, I've had people contact me and basically they're angry, and it's not like they want to commit violence, but they're really boiling. And I think that's important at a time like this, that we remind everyone of the honest, just everyone that we already know exactly what we should and shouldn't do. And that is, there's never room for violence. The example of Martin Luther King Jr., the example of many of our founders and leaders, we need to have peaceful protest, peaceful change, and use the law to our advantage by lawful, peaceful means to bring about the change we need. It's very important that we all get involved. It's very important that we all rise up and actually do something. So many of us do nothing. We just, it's amazing. Something happens to someone behind a gym and you got people rioting in the streets, yet we're slowly losing our liberties over the past 60 years. I can't get people to send an email to their senators. Now is the time to change.
Yeah, it is. And when you send a letter to Congress, your representative or your senator, they do math where they multiply that and realize that a certain amount of people, sometimes it's 1,000, the number of variables or varies, but they realize one person represents a lot more people in having a particular view. So just one letter or one phone call means a lot. But to get back to the stories, the liberal media is drooling over this, and it just, again, it shows that they're paid actors. These are just some reactions. Senator Mike Lee, congratulations, progressives. You've just guaranteed Trump's election. Comfortably smug. Dem have reached the send election opponents to jail stage of defending democracy. Wow. Yeah. That's absolutely spot on. That is. Let's see. Let's watch the PBS.
And I think it should not be minimized that this trial was fair, that Judge Merchan sometimes objected on the part of the defense, particularly during Stormy Daniels' testimony, and then sustained his own objections, however that works, that weren't made by the defense. But to Rachel's point about fairness, that was clearly the ethos that this judge brought to this courtroom.
Fairness. Really? They didn't even have to agree on what the precondition crime was. The judge said there's 3 crimes here, and you only have to choose one. You don't have to agree, which that doesn't even seem that technically is correct.
Exactly. I made a video on this exact subject earlier today, and you're right on spot. Can you imagine in our country, United States of America, we're supposed to be the example to the world of how to have fair courts, that justice is blind, that we don't do one thing or another based on who you are, yet they were able to return a verdict on dead misdemeanors wrapped into some type of alleged felony that they did not have to have unanimity on. Can you believe that? Outrageous.
Sick. Yeah. Yeah. The world is laughing at us. I'm seeing posts on X from people in England, people in the Middle East, people all over the world saying, hey, this is disgusting. And there's an account called the U.S. Ministry of Truth. It's a parody account of the government. And they said, what are you doing? Even Zimbabwe wouldn't do this. I thought that was funny because it's true. It's disgusting. G.E. Martin 9 says, wish England had him too. Yeah, praying for you, England. I know that y'all are really under attack because you don't have the same written constitution, and it's the same globalist plan to import voters who will vote for socialism, communism, Marxism. So praying for you, Martin. Let's see here. We'll jump back to some stories. Yeah, here's Democrats just celebrating this. And again, I just wonder if they know the implications of this, or they don't care. Are they aware and don't care, or are they asleep?
I think a lot of them, to be perfectly blunt about it, I don't think they understand what's going on. I think that their hatred for Donald Trump blinds them to the reality of what's going on. And at least for me, that's why I speak on this topic so openly and I'm so passionate about it, because this is the type of thing that can literally destroy a country. You may not like Donald Trump, but you simply cannot allow your justice system to be weaponized in this lawfare regime where you can just say, hey, we don't like a particular guy, we're going to take him down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that the hatred, it could be that they're just completely blind and not awake. And to my surprise, this border crisis of Biden's, even the governor of North Dakota is speaking out about this. It's coming in from both sides. And it's so delusional when I hear people say the economy is great. And I mean, there might be some boomers who have really good retirement accounts. They've done well. They've been responsible. Great. That's excellent. But for most people, it's not well. And to see that gaslighting from these MSNBC articles to say that illegal immigration isn't an issue, I don't think it's working anymore. I think the propaganda is falling apart.
I agree completely. The only thing I'll say is that a lot of these people that make these policies, they do not go to the store and buy milk or eggs. They are not basically engaged in kitchen table issues. These people are generally very wealthy. They literally have millions in the bank.
Yeah.
And they just can't relate. And when you talk about Donald Trump, at least he tries to relate. He talks to people. He tries to get to understand everyone's problems. And it's quite remarkable that a billionaire like Donald Trump can relate on this type of level. And it's just more of the reasons why people enjoy having Donald Trump as president.
Yeah, I mean, they mocked him for putting ketchup on his steak. It's like, okay, well, y'all are the elitists, not Donald Trump. But again, again, the sentencing is July 11th. I believe it's July 13th is the official nomination. So we're 5 months and some days out from Election Day, and it just keeps getting, this is just the first trial. I think Judge Aileen Cannon in Florida has pretty much stopped the Jack Smith case. I think Fannie Willis down in Georgia, that's probably not going to happen in time. What other cases am I not thinking of? There might be some more.
Well, you got the one down in South Florida with Judge Cannon. You got the D.C. I believe that's a combination of January 6th and some additional records with that Judge Chunick, the D.C.
Okay. Oh, yeah,
radical.
Chutkin, yeah. We'll see if
Chutkin.
That'll be interesting because she's a leftist as well, to see if another trial happens beforehand. Here's some reactions from the Trump family. Eric Trump, May 30th, 2024, might be remembered as the day Donald J. Trump won the 2024 presidential election. Trump Jr., such BS. Sentencing is 4 days, but I said 2. It's 4 days before the GOP convention. They're not even trying to hide the election interference. The case was rigged from the start. Remember, the same hacks in the media demanding, this was your point, Justice Alito recused himself because of a flag, have zero problems with the corrupt judge in this case being a donor to Joe Biden or his daughter making millions from Democrats. As you said, literally $93 million. The judge's daughter makes nearly $100 million from Adam Schiff, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, VP Harris, all of these partisan players paying the judge's daughter. Talk about a conflict of interest.
It's everywhere, and it's stunning.
Yeah, absolutely it is. So this article here mentions, like, okay, what happens next in terms of how people feel about the president now after the conviction, or how they're going to feel. And I'm just going to jump to the bottom, the main point of this. And the main point is they're pointing out that attitudes are so set and concrete regarding both the former Republican president and his Democrat successor in the White House. And they're saying in 2020, they never would have thought somebody could survive a conviction, but they believe Donald Trump can survive the conviction. And then Biden comes out, of course, he has to make a statement. And that's what also makes me think that this is possibly coordinated. Let me get you back. I need to add a new view. But yeah, he made a statement and came out and said, nobody is above the law. Like, why is he? I know it's a campaign, a presidential campaign, but why is he so involved in discussing the criminalization against Donald Trump? It just seems like interference.
Well, it is clearly all about election interference. And it was ironic the other day and interesting the other day how you had actor Robert De Niro and the actual Biden campaign for the first time at the trial. It's kind of hard to say it's not a political persecution, yet you have your campaign team down there with a hired gun thinking that they're going to go ahead and take over the diatribe or the transcript that's going on, and they're going to hijack all the attention President Trump's getting. And of course, that backfired in their face.
Absolutely, it did. Yeah. And I had mentioned this earlier. So De Niro, his move outside of the courtroom has costed him $30 million. A director said this: I gave it to him because he's having a hard time finding work. Then he pulls that stunt in Lower Manhattan. I don't need that kind of negativity on my set. So that's amazing to me that Hollywood, there's a director out there that turns down a liberal for acting crazy. Is that not like, that blew my mind when I found out about that.
Nowadays, whatever I see, it doesn't really shock me necessarily, but yeah, it was, you never know what they're going to try to pull next. And to me, it just smacks of desperation all around.
Yeah. I mean, there's been this long-standing thought that being a conservative on the Hollywood will destroy your career, but maybe that's changing. I also saw Dennis Quaid on what's that English gentleman show? Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan said, "Who you voting for?" Dennis Quaid said, at first I was against Donald Trump, but then I realized that they're destroying the Constitution. So I'm going to vote for Trump. He might be an ass, but he's my ass.
I like that. I think that's I think you're going to see a lot more stories like that coming out in the press, especially in the coming days, because I don't think people are going to take what has happened today and do nothing.
Yeah, that is true. So this is what I'm worried about. Another implication here is World War III. Obviously, this conviction is horrible in itself, a destruction of our Constitution, but could it also be a distraction? Let's watch this and discuss.
Happens inside Russia. How do you feel about that?
I think that's the right decision. I think, Ukraine needs to get whatever help it can get in defending itself. And I think NATO has urged that we allow those strikes. France, Germany, Great Britain, Canada, Finland, most of our allies have urged that. I think it is important for the United States to provide a unified approach that allows the Ukrainians to strike at those targets.
I don't know where this Ukraine war goes. You always hear, Secretary, that right now Russia is.
So I think things are getting worse with Ukraine, and Alex Jones he's said a lot of crazy things, but he's also said a lot of things that have came true. And one thing he talks about that I believe he's spot on is we're actively in a misdirection campaign always. Like whatever you see taking place, there's something secondary that they don't want you discussing. And I just wonder, China is being really aggressive since the new Taiwanese president has been sworn into office. It seems Russia is doing well against Ukraine, and we're just putting more effort into that. But do you think that part of this might be a distraction campaign as well?
Well, I don't know. But what I will tell you is I agree with you on one thing. I don't like war. I don't think anybody likes war. Having said that, what worries me on an international stage is the weakness this president has
Yeah.
shown. That really worries me. When you have a president like Joe Biden that demonstrates weakness every single time, it only invites more problems. And Exhibit A, I give you Afghanistan, in that nutty, crazy withdrawal where we just walked away from that military base that would have been ideal right now, especially with issues
Yeah.
in China going on. We walked away from all that equipment, and now that whole country is essentially back under Sharia law. Women there can
Yeah.
no longer go to school. I mean, it's like we were never there, but we enriched them with all of our bases and the machinery and guns and whatnot that we gave them. It's just as simple as this. We would like to stay out of those problems. But David, I'm going to tell you, I am really worried that when you show weakness, it only invites more problems, more wars. And if you're going to choose one way or the other, the worst position is the half measure. And that is what Joe Biden's always trying to do. He's always trying to walk in the middle somewhere. You never know where he stands one day to the next. I think if Ronald Reagan has taught us anything, and I realize I'm a little bit older than you, but one thing about Ronald Reagan is we were respected. I remember clearly as a kid, and I was just a young kid myself, when the Iran hostage situation was going on. I clearly remember we were just upset that the hostages were over there. And then I remember on TV, Ronald Reagan taking the oath of office, and on the other side of the screen was a split screen of the hostages being loaded on a plane to come home. When we were kids, the joke was, how'd you get out of Iran? And they said, Iran. And what was the weapon you used? I used a Reagan. That was what we talked about as kids.
Nice.
Yeah, a Reagan.
Yeah.
And the point is, they knew this man would push the button. He said what he meant, and he means what he says. You can't say that about President Joe Biden, and that puts us all under more danger.
It does. I think it was 13 billion that was left behind. And you can just see the difference in videos of how Trump was treated by the Prince of Saudi Arabia, a lot of the prime ministers in different countries, and the European Union treated respected Trump was. He's the alpha in the room, but Biden looks like he's just like asleep and completely disrespected. So Elise Stefanik has filed a misconduct complaint with the state of New York because this doesn't make sense either. This judge has been appointed to 3 cases related to Trump and Steve Bannon's case, and I believe Peter Navarro as well. The probability of a judge randomly being selected for 5 cases, it's almost like infinitesimally small. I don't know exactly how many judges they have in New York for this, but it just seems statistically impossible. So we'll see if anything comes of that. It seems like this judge was appointed and it was not randomly selected.
The whole system there is corrupt. I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's corrupt. I believe the accountant, I forgot his name off the top of my head, that worked with the Trump organization, he's serving in Rikers prison at 70-some years old right now because this Bragg guy re-indicted him, and his judge was Merchant. All of these cases were heard by Merchant. The odds of that is significantly, I mean, it's just, I think I heard like 1 in 80,000. Something like that, if it's truly a lottery system for the judges there. So the fix is in.
The fix is in, yeah. Here's another example of an account that doesn't even post politics. This is an aesthetics account. I don't post politics on this page, but desperate times call for desperate measures. I just donated the Trump 2024 campaign, and I fully endorse Trump as the next president of the United States. This is the final stand. Make America great again. So more people waking up and being aware that this is an issue. This is great. Tucker Carlson says, let me move us again. Let's see here. Import the third world, become the third world. That's what we just saw. This won't stop Trump. He'll win the election if he's not Cade first. I don't want to say that and get demonetized, but it does mark the end of the fairest justice system in the world. anyone who defends this verdict is a danger to you and your family.
Yeah, I would
don't
echo
know.
those sentiments completely, 100%.
Yeah, I want to hope that we can put the genie back in the bottle. Maybe I'm too optimistic. I mean, we did after the 1860s. Maybe it can be restored in generations to come. We will see. Greg Abbott says, this was a sham show trial. The kangaroo court will never stand on appeal. Americans deserve better than a sitting U.S. president weaponizing our justice system against a political opponent, all to win an election. We must fire Joe Biden in November. So that, at least they're making some statements. I think a lot of Republicans are weak. Hopefully with Stefanik filing this complaint, it will go somewhere. But my final analysis is Trump might be put in jail. He'll have his own special unit with the Secret Service. He'll be safe. He might be put on house arrest. Their goal is to stop him from campaigning and to use the headline, Trump convicted felon, to sway voters. I don't think it's going to sway voters, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to who collects the most ballots and how these lawsuits and state elections turn out. So they look good. I think Trump is going to win, but it's going to be way closer than it should be, just because Democrats have had this system for 30 years of collecting ballots effectively. That's my thoughts. We'll go ahead and close out. What are your final thoughts, and where can people find you on social media?
Well, David, I want to tell you, I appreciate you having me on your program today. It's been a blast. Really appreciate getting to talk to you and talk to your viewers. And of course, you can find me on YouTube simply at JR Dukes, just like it shows on your screen right there. I generally have videos that come out every day, and I like to go live from time to time. I'm all about talking to you and trying to stop indoctrination. I want everybody to take an active role in government, an active role in their lives, and learn, because when you learn and you understand better, you can absolutely live better. And we cannot allow these Democrats, these woke Democrats, to get away with the nonsense that has happened today. I want everybody to think of this in closing. When the election happens coming up this November 5th, what if Joe Biden is reelected president? That's a terrible thought. I perish that thought. Yet I'm confident that if all of us continue to work together, talk together, and take action, and encourage our neighbors, friends, and family to take action and to actually do something, I know our better days are yet ahead of us.
Better days ahead. I agree, brother. Great having you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, this has been Red Pill News. I'm David. Hit subscribe if you're not already, or hit follow, and I will be back with more soon. We are going to make America great again. Our best days are